Okay, so the next question is about locus of control, authority, sort, responsibility. So how do you know if something is true or not?
Examination, history, credit to the person who's saying it. What have they ever said before that's true? What have they ever said before that's a lie? And the closest possible examination of the facts.
Do you go along
and
with
evidence.
Do you go along with a group, or do you make your own process of inquiry?
I make my own process of inquiry within my capacity.
And should people be allowed to question facts?
People should be allowed to question anything. With the conspiracy story, we hear about Martin Bryant. We hear conspiracy stories about the Twin Towers in America. We have a never-ending series. I've been accused of being a conspirator because I say that in 1942, late 1941 to 42, Roosevelt pulled Japan off invading Russia deliberately onto Pearl Harbor to save his mate Stalin from facing Hitler on one front and Japan on the other. He did that very cleverly. He froze all Japanese wealth in America. He interned all Japanese American citizens. He pulled the American defensive fleet out of Pearl Harbor. And he insulted the Japanese emperor. And the 2 million troops on the Chinese-Russian border were pulled down towards Singapore through Burma, and Japan pulled its fleet off attacking Russia into Pearl Harbor. That resulted in America entering World War II.
Yeah.
After 2 years of seeing England fight Germany by themselves, why wouldn't you help? You would only not help if you were a socialist. And Roosevelt was a socialist. And the bloke that followed him, Truman, was a socialist. That's the truth. That's the truth. Anyone that really wants to examine it can examine it. That's being called a conspiracy. I was called the other day a conspiracy theorist. It's the responsibility of a government to take any conspiracy claim and give it total examination to verify the conspiracy or to deny it based upon truth. America has corrupted itself to the sad extent now where judges are appointed not on their capacity to deal with facts, but on their capacity to deal with feelings.
It's bad. Okay, welfare. Does welfare create wealth or poverty?
Welfare perpetuates poverty and reduces the capacity to create abundance.
Okay. So now on motivation and incentiveness. If you wanted to help another person, what would be the best way to do that? Would you ask questions, make statements, tell them what to do, or tell someone else what to do?
Well, the first thing I'd do is talk to discover their language. Are they an equalist? Are they an apologist? Are they collectivised?
So you're asking questions?
Yeah.
Gathering information?
I'm finding out if they use the word sorry or they use but. People that, or you know what I mean, or you hear me, or there's a series of words that people who are ineffective use. But is one of them, sorry is one of them. A person who says sorry all the time is provided, and a person who says just is another terrible word that failures of people use. So one of the first things I do with people who are ineffective in their own capacity to be people that have got negated responsibility or unable to care for themselves responsibly is I remove from their vocabulary the words that are deliberately indented into their vocabulary with the purpose of destroying their capacity to develop a goal or to recognise truth. The recognition of truth for somebody as Shakespeare said, above all else, my son, to thine own self be true. If a person can't be true about where they're at, they can never determine how they're going to improve their situation. And mind you, a person who is heavily collectivised has no desire to improve their own situation other than to find out how to get more benefits.
Okay. At the beach. When you go to the beach, whose responsibility is it to keep you safe? Yours or the lifeguard?
Well, it's totally your responsibility to keep yourself safe. It's your responsibility to be aware of the safety of others so you can notify the lifeguard if he misses out on something.
Okay, so would you rather live in a country where the government provides everything, food, home, job, income, health cover, etc., but no personal freedom to choose your occupation and the hours that you work, and no choice of where you live? Or would you rather live in a country where nothing is provided for free, you have to demonstrate initiative, you have to work hard for your money with no minimum wage, and you accept the risks?
The only place to live, the only place that has successfully been able to care for those that can't care for themselves is the latter. People that can't care for themselves can never be cared for when everybody's being cared for by the government, because there's no real wealth being created. Socialism produces no wealth. Socialism only consumes wealth. The USSR broke down because the KGB operatives of the Soviet Union had determined that they'd raped, plundered and pillaged their satellites for so long there was nothing else to take. And they changed the system. And what they did to change the system was they gave land title. Because land title is the greatest bastion against socialism that there is. Because when a person owns land title to the place they're living in, they have the capacity to create capital because they've got capacity to borrow against the equity that they own in the place. So what happened in Moscow in 88 was the same thing that happened in 68 in Green Valley in Sydney. The government said, you're paying $40 a week rent. We're now going to compute that to a 20-year mortgage. You're now going to pay $20 a week off your mortgage. Green Valley was converted from a brick-shaped fibro mass of low-life houses without carports, without fountains, without fish tanks, without gardens, without pathways, without fly screens, without awnings over the windows, without anything. Rented housing commission houses that were worth, when they first went on the market, were worth $38,000. 10 years later, they were worth about $20,000. When they went 10 years later, they were worth $40,000, $50,000. Because when the person owned them, fly screens went in, pathways went in, gates went in, fences went in, pools went in, brick cladding went on. You've got to have land title in order to have a free society. Russia introduced it. When they first pegged the price of a two-room house, in Moscow they call the house by the number of rooms. In Australia we call it by the number of bedrooms. They call it by the number of rooms. So a two-room apartment was worth in 88 $50,000 US. It's now worth nearly $1 million. So land title gave the capital, and the satellites were dropped off, and trade started, and the poor people started to be fed for the first time again. Because poor people can only ever be fed from abundance, and socialism never creates abundance, it only steals for it, or it commandeers it, it diverts it, it never creates it. So I would rather live by myself on a desert island, eating coconuts, if there was any there, than rely upon a government to provide me with a house. Because the government will never provide me with a house, unless I become one of the slavers. Yeah. The horrible thing about socialism is that the people who conform the most and who enslave others the hardest are the ones that achieve the best houses. The ones who are the most criminal. amoral, unconscionable, unethical slavers. And of course, you've got the other side, which are the people who volunteer for slavery, which are the Muslims.
You know, back in 1620, when the Pilgrims landed in America, it was actually socialist, so they had like a community garden. But after 3 years, people were starving, and so then they decided to give everybody a plot of land. And as soon as they gave everybody a plot of land, then the mother who'd complained that she couldn't go to work in the field because she had a little baby to take care of her child, she was actually there in the field, baby on her back, a little kid there. She was working really hard. And the guy who actually hadn't gone to work because he said he had a bad back, had to stay home, he was also out there in the field. So as soon as people actually had their own plot of land, there was an incentive, and America's success was actually built upon that.
It was, and then came the American Revolution. The American Revolution was orchestrated by the socialist movement of England on the basis that America would become the first socialist nation. And the British admirals committed treason when they ceased to supply the British troops in a timely manner to put down the revolution, because the purpose was to make America then the first really successful socialist country. When it failed because of land ownership, and when it failed, those same British socialists turned their attention to orchestrate the French Revolution.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, political correctness. What do you think about political correctness?
PC. Political correctness goes along with diversity, goes along with equality, goes along with the denial of truth and the abolition of freedom of speech. As long as someone's not defaming somebody in an untruthful manner, political correctness is a grave danger. I don't exercise it. I never have, and I never will. I'll say exactly how I understand the truth to be.
So what is more important, avoiding, offending, insulting or hurting someone's feelings, or protecting your family and friends?
When you protect your family and friends, you're in fact protecting the person that you're not wanting to offend.
How?
Because you're creating abundance. If you're protecting your family and friend, you're preserving the things that make the country free.
Oh, okay. Right, fair enough.
And the people who can't work, who won't work, can only ever expect to be fed from abundance. They can't be expected to be fed in someone else's house compulsorily. That's why we have this big Australia concept. That's why they want to bring in as many as they possibly can who can't and won't feed themselves, because they want to remove the abundance from those who would use their abundance to defend Australia against socialism. Every aspect of Rudd and Gillard was designed to remove the wealth from small business. There was another major reason, which hasn't really ever been a media concept or media expose, is that when Rudd became Prime Minister, he appointed a man called Walcott, who was a former diplomat, known communist, to head up the Australian Asian Union. Rudd intended to take Australia into a Euro-style union with Asia, so that there would be no visa requirement from Indonesia to Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, Australia, all part of an Asian union. And the budget for that was $20 million a year. And the political aspect of Rudd was to destroy the capacity of small business owners to have abundance to fight Australia being taken into an Asian Australian Union.
I asked you these two questions here. So is it more important to criticise what is wrong with our world, or to focus on improving upon what already works?
the old rules, you know, you concentrate on what works, you discard what doesn't, you attempt what may. What we have to concentrate on is the capacity to let those that can create the wealth create it without taxing them to hell to pay for those that won't. So we can feed a refugee in Afghanistan at about, we can feed about 30 in Afghanistan or 1 in Australia. Each boatie that Rudd and Gillard brought in costs $90,000 the first year. That feeds an enormous amount of people there. We spent billions fighting a war in Afghanistan, and what should have taken place in Afghanistan was they should have given everyone in Afghanistan that was in a house title to that house on a rental payment plan, same as Green Valley, same as Moscow. And we should have paid Afghanistan the aid in return for them taking the refugees. Every refugee that came to Australia should have gone straight to Afghanistan. And it could have been done. And the only way a person, the reason that we don't do it, the reason we didn't do it, because it was counter to the reason that it happened. The reason that it happens, the reason that these cults are being brought into Australia is to destroy the fabric of our society. Our society's fabric is the small business owner and his family. And to destroy that, you have to destroy the capacity of me and the capacity of any other small business person to have funds to fight the desire to remove small business. They don't want small business operating. They only want their big business, and they want to flood Australia with so many people that Australians don't even recognise it as Australia anymore.
Yeah. Please take a moment to like and subscribe, remembering to click on the bell. Then check the comments box below to join our team of patrons and crew. And you can always find me on Facebook at the Peace Mapping Group. The link is in the comments box. And once again, thanks and all the best to you.